a good place to start, maybe from the beginning. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's start from the beginning.
Okay. Feels so weird talking about yourself, but I guess that's what you do.
Right.
Um, so I was born in a suburb of Tokyo. It was called Musashi Kogane. It's about 40 minutes by train from Shinjuku Station, which is one of the busiest train stations in Tokyo. And I grew up there until I was around 4 and 5. And I was born to a Japanese father and an American mother. So that's actually quite rare. I think a lot of the times the mother is of Asian descent and the father is white for, cultural reasons. But mine was flipped. And then I ended up coming to Minnesota around that young age for my father's job. And then I grew up going back and forth between Minnesota, very like white, nice. Minnesota nice is a phrase that is very true, cold, and Japan. And so every summer I'd go back and go to school for the months that America had the summer break. And so I had a very cross-cultural education. And then around 10 or 11, I started getting more into like my hobbies in America. And so it was a little bit harder to get to Japan, plus like plane ticket prices were getting more expensive and stuff. So I stopped going so frequently, but maybe like once a year. And then in Minnesota, I kind of developed a really good solid friend group at the hobby that I ended up choosing long-term. So that was circus arts. So I was starting to commit to going to this place called Circus Juventus. And it was a youth training school for circus arts. So like kids under 21. It's pretty cool. Like for any kid who's a little hyperactive and doesn't want to do traditional sports like soccer, like swimming, that is the place to go because you can just it's free reign for kids and they teach you all kinds of safety. You feel a lot of agency from a young age. And it's everything from like acrobatics to dance to theater. And you make the closest friends and huge part of my life. But I started going there. And then briefly, I'll talk about high school, but I was always really into academics, kind of a nerd. I went to a music conservatory for high school, and then I ended up transferring so I could go to spend some time at the University of Minnesota during my last 2 years of high school. That aside, I graduated. I ended up going to Stanford in 2014 and then quickly took time off. So I had an opportunity to go work for a company called Spiegelworld for a show called Absinthe. And this is a circus show. Spiegelworld's a very well-renowned company around the world.
I've seen the show, the Absinthe show. That's so cool.
In Las Vegas.
No idea. That's amazing.
Did you like it?
I did. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's raunchy.
So cool. It's so raunchy. It's amazing. So it's what's really funny actually, like full circle tie back to Microsoft. My old team, we all went to the show together. Like during the week of like Microsoft Ready or something. I think it was Ready. And it was a small team. It was like Ryan. My partner on the team, it was his idea to do it. And he just like roped our manager in. And so she bought us all tickets and it was so good because Ryan and I sat next to each other and my manager and then a woman who worked with us, who actually worked with my manager previously, but from the UK, was like over down the way with our manager. And Ryan and I were just giggling the whole time. We were actually like front and center of the show. And we were like, oh my God, we're like our managers, like 5 seats away from us. Watching this raunchy show, but it was so cool. It was like such a fun. Yeah, I loved it. What did you?
Glad you liked it.
Yeah.
So yeah, anytime you want to break the ice with your boss, take them to Absinthe in Las Vegas. It's still running. It's still one of the best shows on the strip. There's stripping and there's acrobatics and like really hot bodies flying around. So go see it.
Yeah, I highly recommend.
Yes. But so I was working for Absinthe in Australia. And then sometimes in these different tours that you go on globally, you'll cross over with other shows. And so that's when I first met Totem by Cirque Du Soleil. And I got to know some of the cast, the artistic director. And then it just so happened that they were going to Japan next. They were looking for a female aerialist with a certain skill set, a certain look. And they were going at a certain like time of the year where my contract happened to be ending. And so it was kind of like star aligning moment. When I look back, I'm like, there's no way that all of that could have just happened randomly. So I feel very lucky. And I ended up moving to Totem for Cirque du Soleil. So that was another journey. Huge growing period for me. I was 18. Moved to Montreal and trained in the brutal like middle of winter. That was a really rough time because it was really cold in Montreal. I didn't know anybody. It was really hard training. It was every day, multiple hours a day, Monday through Friday. And then during the weekends, I didn't know anyone. So I'd sometimes trying to trek out, but the snow was so bad that like nothing was really running that much. And then everyone speaks French. And so I didn't speak French at the time, but I digress. So then they sent me to the tour. I toured the Japan tour, which is 5 different cities. I did Russia. I did parts of Europe. And then I ended up leaving because after 2 years, that's when Stanford, that's the limit to Stanford's leave of absence before you have to reapply. So I went back to school. And then I graduated. I had some internships here and there, but I graduated and went straight to Microsoft. So that is the Microsoft story.
That is amazing. So wait, I want to go back to like training. What was training like? I know you said it was like multiple hours a day, really difficult. Like, what did you guys do? Yeah, I'm always really curious because I feel like it's got to be just like physically, emotionally, mentally exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was definitely an oddball when it came to joining Cirque du Soleil because most people have some sort of professional background. Like some of them are Olympians, some of them have gone to circus college and have done this through high school, through college, like, or they came from traditionally circus families. And so they were kind of from a young age, like built with these skills already, or it was as a part of their discipline already. And so for me, I was kind of at a major disadvantage because this was a hobby. I was not a traditional circus acrobat at all. So there's a long way for me to go. And I lacked a lot of the strength and skills and techniques that I needed for the role. And luckily, Cirque du Soleil's training and coaching team is absolutely excellent, but it was a lot of work. Like there are definitely days when I would come home and just cry in my room alone. It was so bad. Training, I was a quote unquote soloist. The act I performed was actually with 3 people, but it was an act alone for myself, and it was the aerial rings. So pretty rough for an aerialist, but I remember some days that my hands would be torn, like my whole palm would be torn, and I have marks from my forearms of like the safety like mechanism, just like on my forearms, ripping them up. So there would be days where I couldn't really train much without taping the entire hand and doing that. So that was kind of brutal. But I still look back on it very fondly because it was such a growth moment. I think some of you sometimes you do that. It's like it's really fun or something like fun that's like really dangerous or unsafe or terrible, but you look back and it was a great time.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I think, well, what's funny is like, even, I look back even at my time in Microsoft, like the worst 2 years of my life at Microsoft, I still look back on them and I'm like, man, I'm really glad that actually that I went through that, right? Like, I'm really glad that I experienced that. But like, when you're in the moment of it, you're like, what is happening?
Yeah,
know,
that's
so
like something in the human psyche about like the ability to just pretend like it was fine.
I know, it's like you look back at it's real and you're so proud too. Like even hearing you speak, I'm like, God, I'm so proud of you for putting in on that all that work. And then it's just so, I think what's so amazing is like you're like, yeah, it was a hobby for me. I didn't have this like really strong skill set or training in the background, but like you were still there, which is so cool. And it's like, I don't know, it's just amazing how possible it was for you and how possible you made it. And like, yeah, just the dedication that goes behind that. It's really beautiful, despite the pain.
Despite the pain makes us stronger. So
Totally. That's like such an well, it might not be like totally an Asian thing, but I totally think it's an Asian thing. Like I feel like I feel that same way like from my mom. Just like it's just push through it. Just push through it. You're gonna be fine, you're gonna be better for it.
100%, yes.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So then when you joined Microsoft, how old were you when you joined Microsoft?
I was trying to think, 22. Yeah, 22, I think. Yeah.
Epic. And you started as an engineer?
Yes, as a customer.
Yeah. What was your technology? I feel like I should know this, by the way. Like, why don't I?
We really talked about work that much. I was in the cybersecurity group.
Yes, I did know that. That's amazing. So like, how was your start at Microsoft? And like, when did you start to know that it wasn't going to be your forever home?
Yeah, I think maybe Microsoft got unlucky in the sense that, well, the world got unlucky because COVID happened. And that's when I graduated and that's when I joined for the first time. And I was part of this thing called the Aspire program, which is the college program. So for new hires. So this was supposed to be kind of like a second college, right? It was supposed to be that you all move to the same city, you're all living together, it's a lot of fun, and you grow, and like you do the journey together. And we missed out on all of that. It was all remote. So number one, that didn't get to happen. So I didn't get to have that bonding experience with my peers. And the remote training was good. They did a really, really good job. And I think the people who were in charge of running the program and the materials and kind of helping us get onboarded did a really excellent job. So there's nothing bad to say there. But it was mostly just 8 hours a day of training. So you'd be in meetings, presentations, and then you do some group work and so on. And that was for about a month. And then for the 2 months after that, you kind of continued to train into your solution area, and then they set you free. So I would say onboarding was great. They did a good job. The part after that, I think, when I realized what my job was actually going to entail and the impact I didn't have, as well as the lack of freedom I had, I started to think like, okay, what else can I do to actually improve my skill set?
Yeah, I think actually that's around the time we met, because I feel like I think that I spoke at like a women's leadership panel or something like that for the incoming like college hire class that we had. And I remember you reaching out to me afterwards, and we were like a couple of our first conversations were really about just like getting started, like digging into the career and like, how do we make it the thing that we want? And a lot of, this is really funny, but like the majority of people that I talked to at Microsoft, especially coming out of the Aspire program, like I'm talking literally to like 5 or 6 of the Aspires from the August cohort now. And a lot of them, like a lot of our work is like, how do I switch roles? Like I was literally talking to someone yesterday and they were like, Marie, you're like the queen of moving around at Microsoft. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing, but like, I know I am. And I was like, yes, so let's talk about it. I feel like that was initially how we began talking, which is like the same thing for you of like, how can I get into something that feels more impactful? I will say too, not to like say anything negative about Microsoft or the Microsoft experience and starting out, but there is this thing that happens, I think, especially for Aspires, because I came in as an Aspire as well 7 years ago. And I did come in from industry. I was like in the industry, I got my master's and then I came in that way. And I remember everyone joining and having this expectation of making this massive impact at the company and like with our customers. And like, I think part of it is there's this really big hype in the Aspire training of how important we all are as Aspires, like how important like being a part of the new generation at Microsoft is and having that new and different perspective is. And it's like we really feel that for the first couple of months, and then you go off into the business and you're like, oh, I'm basically a glorified intern. Not that we're really glorified interns, but we're like, oh, like what is the impact that I'm really able to make here? And like, how do I navigate this new place? And how do I make people take me seriously? Like I remember the first 3 years I worked at Microsoft, and this still happens occasionally. Like I work with one of our executive leadership teams, but I'll come across someone else, especially if they see me on camera, they're like, you're very junior. I feel like that was like my big issue. The beginning of Microsoft was just like, how do I get over this coming in as an Aspire thing? And how do I get people to take me seriously? And how do I work on the things that I want to work on? So I don't think you're alone necessarily in that.
Yeah, that definitely resonates. And I think it resonates with my whole class too. And if I look back in my class, the majority of people have switched out of their roles, but you're doing great work helping the kids there now.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. So tell me, tell me your path to leaving Microsoft. I know you were helping someone with a startup. I remember we talked about this, but give me the whole rundown of what you started doing and creating and building alongside your job and how that kind of cascaded out.
Yeah, so at Microsoft, I think it took me a while to really realize what my role entailed. And then once I realized that, I was kind of I realized that it wasn't going to be enough for me. So I'm always someone who's like trying to grow as a person. And if the role I'm doing, like I'm still going to do it well, but I'm going to look for other avenues to expand my knowledge and challenge myself. And so that's what happened with this other company. So a friend of mine that I had since Stanford days had started a company, and it was a startup. They were awesome. They had a small team and they wanted some help in like the product and like research and analytics and data space. And that's kind of where I fit well. And so I did some work for them. And that gave me some product knowledge, it gave me some growth and a lot of insight into an early stage startup, which is very exciting. And then eventually with Microsoft, I kind of got to the point where I thought maybe I should move to a different role within Microsoft, and that would be encompassing for all of my needs. So I started looking around, and I had a lot of interviews, and for some reason I did very well in the interview process, but never ever got the actual like offer at all. So I went through a couple different full round interviews, never got the offer. No one would ever give me a reason why. They'd usually ghost me, unfortunately. I don't know why that happened. Because I know you can find people in Microsoft, they're active, they're in other they won't respond to you. I'm like, what did I do? Because they were so nice to me on the interview. So that's kind of funny. It's not like the real world where you can actually ghost someone. It's like I could see you in my network.
Yeah, you're like, wait, I know that you're online. I know what you're doing right now. Like, I know your working hours. You're not that far away from me, actually. No, this is really funny. So I love this. I had the same experience. And then through my, like, even though I've shifted a lot at Microsoft, there was a team that I like look back on this and still laugh. There's a team that gave me the indication that they really wanted to bring me onto the team. The hiring manager was like, I really want to hire you. And like, I have the last day. So like, I just need you to go through the interview rounds. And I went through the interviews, and it was so funny. It was for a team that was working in AI. And there was an interview. One of my loops, one of the guys that I interviewed with was like really deeply technical and like had a lot of experience with like AI and ML, and was asking me all of these really deep design questions, but it was like this really vague design question. Like there was like nothing really like solid there. Like I could tell he was making it up as he went. And he was like, I'm not looking for a particular answer, I just want to know how you're thinking about this. And I'm like, okay. And I think very differently. Like, it's the best way that I can put this. Like I'm not I don't know. And so we were talking through some things, and I was asking him a bunch of questions, and I could tell that I wasn't giving him what he wanted, but like he was like, oh, but I'm not looking for anything in particular. But I was like, but he is, like, he's trying to guide me to this one very specific answer in place, even though there's no specific answer. Like there was no right answer for this. And it was really fascinating because I was like, I don't know where you're trying to guide me, like let's like help me out here, which I don't think I said, but I was asking a ton of questions and we were going back and forth. And then at the end of the interview, a couple days later, I reached back out to the team because the hiring manager's out of office, and it was like his skip that ended up, his manager that ended up, manager's manager that ended up reaching back out and was like, yeah, we don't think you're the best person for the role. And I was like, could you provide me some feedback? And I forget exactly what the feedback was, but I went back to them and I was like, look, if you're truly looking for someone that has like a diverse way of thinking, you cannot be guiding them to one specific answer and to like think in the one exact way that the whole rest of your team thinks. And I remember like sending this really long, not terrible message, but I look back on it, I'm still laughing that I did it. And I'm glad that I did it, because I think this happens a lot in products and product groups, especially at places like Microsoft, but really probably all over the industry, where we say we want something different, but like really we want someone that looks different but like thinks the same exact way, right? And I was just like, what are you I was like, I know the rest of the interview loop, and I know nobody thinks like I think, right? And it's like, it's a pro until it's not a pro, right? And if it's not the exact thing that you want. And so there's that. Like I always think back on that and I'm like, man, I hope I never do this, because it feels very like hypocritical and wrong. And then the ghosting thing is like, especially internally, you're like, hello, I'm just down the hall from you. Can you just like like I actually see you coming into the office every day. Like, can you just let me know what's going on? But I feel like the thing that happens oftentimes, because I work with people now, like outside of Microsoft, not necessarily landing jobs in Microsoft, but across the industry and industries, is like oftentimes, especially with bigger companies, teams will have pre-identified their person, and like you will just have no idea about it. And so then you'll go through a loop, and no matter how well you do, it's like sometimes not even going to matter. Like even in the case of the team that I interviewed for, like they didn't choose me, right? But the hiring manager was like, we want you, we're going to hire you, just go through the loops. So that thing it's something that totally happens that no one really talks about. And I think it's a little bit unfair because you're like wasting everybody's time. So that's unfortunate, and I'm sorry that you had that experience.
Oh, thank you for sharing your experience too. It makes me feel less alone. But I know this happens a lot, and I do feel for the hiring side as well, because I get it that it's hard, but it's one of those things that so many companies have popped up to try to fix hiring because it's a messed up system, but it's going to take a long time before we figure out something better.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, hold on. So you were applying for, interviewing for a ton of other jobs internally. And what else?
That was mostly it. I was still working for this startup. This startup was actually trying to offer me a position. So then that transition started to happen. Like, okay, I could jump ship and then move to this startup, which is awesome. And they're still awesome and doing really well. But then I had another idea about potentially doing my own thing, because I've always wanted to do my own thing. It was just, I've always had a bunch of ideas. I have the energy and the execution to be able to do my own thing. But there's no idea that I couldn't get out of my head. Something would come, I'd work on it for like a week and it'd be like kind of fizzle out. But I had the idea for Webacy, or what became Webacy, and that stayed in my head. I was up at night, I was calling my friends. I called my then my now co-founder, and him being willing to join me made me feel like, okay, this is like, I can do this. So there's a little bit of a confidence boost in doing things with other people that you trust. But that was kind of the moment for me.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Oh, okay. This is so good. So let's go back to the very beginnings of Webacy. So what inspired this idea? And then talk to me a little bit more about just this concept of the idea didn't leave you. I love this so much because I work with a lot of people as well who want to start a business or start their own thing. And they say the exact same thing actually that you said. And I resonate with this a lot of I have a lot of ideas. I know I can follow through and execute on them, but nothing really sticks for all of that long, right? And then it's until you find the thing. So it's how do you find the thing is such a big question. And then what do you how do you know that you found the thing? So yeah, if you could give a little bit of insight into what that looked like for you in terms of this idea dropping in, what was it inspired by? How did that unravel?
Yeah, totally. So there is a founding story of Webacy that is publicized and I've talked about before, but I'll give you some more backstory because there is more backstory, and then I'll tell you the founding story. But I think one thing is that I've always grown up, as you know, Asian cultures are a little bit more okay and comfortable with talking about death, ancestry, being connected to life and death, the circle of life, that sort of thing. So Japan's the same. I grew up going to my great grandmother's funeral, or going to temples and shrines, and there's cemeteries spread out randomly throughout Japan, so that you'll just walk to school and you'll walk through a cemetery. It's just normal. It's just part of everyday life. So that's number one. And then number two, actually working for Cirque, a couple people have passed away while I've been working for Cirque du Soleil. And it hasn't been on when I was performing, that kind of thing, but people very close to the act I was performing, or the show I was performing, or the community, have passed away on the job. So this is something that's very serious and isn't really talked about very much, because the whole point is entertainment and happiness and professionalism, but it has happened because it's dangerous work. And so I think working for Cirque and working for circus arts in general, there have been moments where things have not been quite safe for me specifically. And that's moments where you kind of think about your own safety. And I think the moment when I, as an adult, first had to face my mortality was when I first joined Cirque, and I had to sign my my life insurance, not life insurance papers, but my beneficiaries. If I were to, so I'm sitting at the table, I'm 18, this woman sitting right next to me, signing all these papers, getting paid, which is great. All these, and then she's like, okay, who do you want to leave all your money to if you pass away? This is real. This is a real thing. Anyways. So yeah, I think death, mortality, kind of that memento mori, remember that you die, has been with me for a while. I'm also very into philosophy, and so Stoicism has a lot to do with talking about, accepting your death and so on. So that has always been a cool part that I like to reflect on, talk about, and so on. So that's the backstory. I'll pause there if you have any points that you want to bring up, because the founding story is pretty much this something I've repeated a couple times.
No, I love this. This is amazing, actually. It's this realization of, well, one, this almost total acceptance and celebration of death and the circle of life, as well as the realization of your own mortality, right? Because I think it's one thing to accept the death around us. It's another thing to come and realize oh shit, like at any moment, I too can die, right? I think this is really cool. I think it's really beautiful. And yeah, it's something I want to circle back to, but continue, please.
Okay. Yeah, it's a big topic. I think everyone should spend some time thinking about it, even though it's scary. But so the real catalyst for Webacy was during the pandemic. My cousin unfortunately passed away. He's my older cousin, but he wasn't that much older. And so I think it was like another moment where I realized that that's eventually something that we'll all experience. But I also got to firsthand see what it's like for someone, or like when people don't have a will, when people don't have a plan, and you have assets to deal with. And then I spoke to my now co-founder, and he had a really similar situation with his best friend's sister. And she had a lot of crypto. So both in Coinbase and both in non-custodial accounts. And the next 8 months they spent trying to, gain access back to it or recover it. And we saw all kinds of things with social media and the digital lives and digital legacy we have online. So we knew that there was a huge opportunity here to, first of all, help people, and then second of all, use software to solve this new problem that isn't handled by traditional stuff. So that's how Webacy was born.
That's so amazing. Oh my gosh, I could totally see how this could be something that would drop into your mind that you couldn't get off of your mind. I think too, so similarly, a really close friend of mine, her dad passed a few years ago, and she she actually wrote this beautiful essay about like all the paperwork that comes with death, right? Like, and how almost like the processes that we have to go through overshadow the actual like grieving and the actual like experience of death and the acceptance and the celebration of someone's life. Because if you're the person that has to deal with the paperwork and the stuff that comes with death, it's like where and when do you actually get to grieve and like actually get to experience the death itself, right? Celebrate it, pay homage to it, respect it, celebrate yourself, like take the time for yourself, which it's like impossible, I think. So this is such a cool, necessary, just like beautiful concept, I think, a beautiful like idea. Yeah. And was there like a particular moment for you where everything came together and you were like, this is really happening, and you were feeling it?
Yeah, I think when I started building the product and iterating through the concept, and when I realized the opportunity for it, I think was when I was like, okay, this is worth leaving Microsoft for. Is like, first of all, looking at the space, there weren't many companies actually tackling the digital asset side. There's some wonderful, wonderful companies that are tackling getting people to create wills, putting together paperwork ahead of time, and that's not something we're working on. So it's like, these companies are doing great. I want to do and create the solution for the next thing that we're moving to. We're all moving online. All of our assets are trying to be represented online, and we have no way to fix that. So the excitement of the hotel, I'm still excited even 6 months later. I'm like, there's so much to do. Yeah, and I think every day I just woke up wanting to work on Webacy instead of wanting to do my Microsoft work. I'm like, okay, something needs to change because I'm not doing Microsoft justice at all.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I love this. This is amazing. So the moment that you realized this, like, did you start planning like an exit plan? Did you just decide you were going to jump ship? Like, what does it look like? And then specifically, like, because you're working in the startup and tech space, like, what did it look like for you? Did you guys get funding? What was that process? Yeah, walk me through all of it.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a risk adverse person, which is funny because of the jobs I've had and my decision to leave like a very stable job. But I was deciding between this startup, I had my friend's startup that I was working for and was stable and was offering a great position, staying at Microsoft, maybe continuing to find another position, or doing Webacy. And I think my interest and preference towards startup style work, where I'm like clearly just everything I do impacts the business, was more my speed. But then it was just between the two. And then I realized that I will always you will always work harder on something that you're more interested in, and that was Webacy. And so as soon as I knew that, I told my manager that I was putting in my notice, and for some reason everything went really well. Like, she told me congratulations more than anything. You told me congratulations, you were so happy for me, and everything was really smooth after that. And this is funny because they had just gone through the paperwork of moving me to San Francisco like weeks before. So, yeah, that was just kind of funny timing. But after that, it was pretty smooth. And then I did 2 more weeks and that was it.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I didn't even realize. So you just did 2 weeks and then you were out?
I think it was 2 weeks. It could have been 4. I can't really remember.
Yeah, I feel like maybe you might have told me like Yeah, you might have told me that before you told your manager, because I feel like you told me 4 weeks before. And yeah, I was so excited. I'm still so excited. Like I think it's so amazing. It's really funny, actually. I was just in like a mentor call yesterday with one of the aspires from the August class that came in, and he was talking to me about another aspire who joined around that time frame, who I don't know this person. He was like, "Do you know this person? I think he's like kind of famous." And I was like, "I don't think I know him." Um, and he's like, "Yeah, I recognized him." And then a few days later, I realized like, oh, he's like TikTok famous. And he's all over social media, and he's like monetized it. I think because of like his dog or something. I was like, that's pretty cool. And he was like, yeah, he just quit Microsoft actually. And it was really amazing because this conversation was like, I mean, I think he's kind of crazy because he's leaving like benefits, and like you never know what's gonna happen. And like in the back of my head, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to tell him that I'm leaving too. And like, and I'm like, is it really that crazy? Like, is this crazy?
I have so many questions about what you're doing right now. Like what has happened?
We can totally go into it. I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. But it's funny, I don't think, to me, like, you are your safest asset. And so when you're like, I'm leaving and I'm gonna go do this thing that I want to do, I was like, fuck yes. Like, because you can always come back to Microsoft, right? You can always go to like any, like, let's say safe, high paying, epically benefited tech company that you want to go to. Like at any point in time, it's always an option for you. But stepping out and doing something for yourself, like, I mean, that's always also an option, by the way. It's never not an option. But at the end of the day, like, you are your safest asset, right? And like doing the thing that your heart is telling you to do, I think is the most, to me, is the most important thing. And so despite your, like, I know, considering the jobs I've had, I seem very risk averse. But to me, I'm like, actually, no, it doesn't seem risky at all. It seems like the safest and the surest thing that you can do. So yeah, oh, that's so cool. And also I have to say, I like, for some reason I was like, did she get 4 weeks? Like, what were your last couple of weeks like? Were you checked in? Were you checked out?
I was kind of checked out. It's not great. I did wrap things up with my customers and like did the right things, and I still put in my hours. I spent more of the last 2 weeks kind of mentoring like the community, that the next group coming in. So that was more fun. I did like a brunch and brew coffee thing and spent more time with the next aspires because I felt like the best use of what I could give. Yeah, I was kind of checked out. It was not great.
Oh, that's amazing. No, yeah, no, I love it. So yeah, so for me, we can dive into all of this stuff. So I as we talked about, I don't know if I had this in the recording or not at the beginning, but just had like the craziest last couple of months of the year of 2022. But last year, around like May, June, actually when you were exiting, I feel like that's like when I was just getting things started with my own business, because I was like, oh, hey, follow me on social media at the Corp Psychic. And you were like, what is this? You were like, wait a second, you have a business? What is this? Yeah. And so it started out really just as like super similar in that it was an idea that came to my mind that I couldn't stop thinking about. And I was like, and it wasn't even just like I couldn't stop thinking about it, like there's a problem that needs to be solved. It was just like I can't not do something with this idea, I guess. Like that's what was kind of like happening. I was like, oh, I can't not do something with this. And I felt so compelled to just start working on it. And so for me, it's like literally the Corporate Psychic was a union, or like an integration of two very opposing things. And so hence the name Corporate Psychic. Like, corporate's a super triggering word in the spiritual space, we could say, in like almost any space actually outside of corporate. Like anyone that I talk to, every time I meet someone and I'm traveling, they're always like, oh, corporate, like, oh, the 9 to 5. And what's fascinating is, like, just the other day I was talking to my best friend who works at for a nonprofit, but she worked in government before, and I sent her this it was like, actually, I think it was an excerpt of a podcast talking about just how low women and women with children are ranked in the appreciation of the corporate ladder. Like, women with children are like at the bottom. It was awful. Whereas like fathers, like men with children, were like at the top, and they like make the most money, and women with children make like the least amount of money. And I sent it to her, and she's like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm not in corporate, right? Like, this is why I work for nonprofit. And I was just like, what is going on? Like, everybody hates on corporate. But I'm also like, but you totally are. Like, in my mind, I'm like, even though you're for a nonprofit, like, you totally are still like a 9 to 5 person that like works. Like, to me, that's all corporate, right? Like, all businesses are corporate. And I think about this too, like, not that corporate's bad, because obviously it's in my name. Like, I work for a massive corporate company right now, and I truly don't like have anything at all against corporations. I think like people are the things that suck your souls, not the actual business, right? Like, it's not the business itself, but it's this really fascinating thing where it's so easy, like the word corporation, even the energy behind it, it's so easy to hate on. And then the same thing is true almost of psychic, where it's like this space that is like stereotypically just like really mystical and out there. Also, like back in the day, people with any type of like known abilities would be literally killed or like excommunicated. And it's still a space where it's so triggering that even in the spiritual community or world, like when I told my mentor and coach that I was going to use the name the corporate psychic for my business, like her first reaction was, are you sure you want to use the word psychic? Like, that's a very triggering word. Like, what are you, are you like, what's that about? Like, what's the thing? And I'm like, that is the thing. And the idea behind it is not to really identify with either space, but it's like, how can we bring together all parts of self? How can we integrate all parts of self, all parts of human beings, each of us, all parts of like energy together into one, and like grow from that space, right? And like use that as expansion, as opposed to like this thing that we do in life where we categorize ourselves like, I'm a corporate person, or like I'm a psychic, or like I'm a swimmer, I'm a surfer, I'm a climber, right? Like all of these different things that we have for ourselves, and almost all these different personalities we use when we like are in different situations, right? Like when we're with our group of people. So I was like, how can we just, and for so many years I've been thinking like, how can I show up fully in myself and make money doing that? Like that was like a thought that I had for so long. I was like, how can I just be myself and not necessarily make money like for being me, right? But like, how can I just show up in one place 100%? And I had been working over the past 7 years to really get to that place, even at Microsoft and in the corporate space, which I feel like, by the way, is so much easier to do when you're a remote person versus like when you have to go into the office, right? Like things are different when you see someone every single day and you're like, feel like you have to dress a certain way or act a certain way or like eat a certain thing or like all of the little subconscious things that happen with us. And so I was like, oh, I think I'm going to lean into this idea. And at the same time, I was going through this spiritual awakening. And so the word psychic felt just like so good, because I was experimenting with like practicing tarot and like reading the Akashic records and like really diving into the occult space. And so I was like, I can totally, like, I've been mentoring people forever. I've been like helping people like move into the career of their dreams for forever also. Why am I not charging people money for this? Like that like thought came across my head. I was like, and I also am doing readings. Like, why do I not charge people money for this? And so when I started the corporate psychic, it was like this fun side project that I couldn't get out of my head. And then now it has just like totally unraveled into something completely different. But essentially, like fast forward back to January of this year, like my personal life got so crazy. So much was happening. Like death is one of those things that came up in the past couple of months, like many deaths actually, not in a bad way. And at the same time, my business was like flourishing. It was doing so well. So it was like all this contraction and expansion at one time. And really similar to you, Microsoft was the last thing on my list, like every single time. It was just the last thing that like, even though it was the thing that was paying me my money, even though it was the thing that like gives me benefits, right? It was the last thing that I would come to. And so from January until literally like maybe a week or two ago, I didn't even work a full week of work. I think for like 7 or 8 weeks, maybe even 9 weeks, like almost every single day, something happened in my life where I had to step away from work. And I realized like I was deprioritizing work so much because like I was like, maybe this is not really where I'm supposed to be anymore. Like maybe this isn't the thing that's really growing me. And I had said back in November to one of my coaches that, because I totally don't believe you have to quit your 9 to 5. Like this is a huge part of a lot of my work and work with people. Like I totally don't believe you have to quit your job, the thing that sustains you, to like go do the thing that you want to do. Like a lot of times I think we can have both. And part of the idea behind my business was this realization that like I did my yoga teacher training 10 years ago, and then I did another one maybe 5 years ago. And both times I went through this process of like learning this new aspect of myself and then not being sure how to integrate it into the other aspects of myself. And then having this full existential crisis of like, do I need to quit my job now? Like that happened multiple times. And I've seen it happen so often with people especially people in the spiritual space, but like really people like all in all sorts of different spaces that are not totally like, I don't know, fully seeing themselves as like the stereotypical type A person in corporate, right? And then there's this thing of like, do I quit my job? What do I do? How do I do it? And like the answer is, I think you integrate all of yourself and then you see like what comes. And so yeah, back in November, I was talking to a coach and I was just like, look, I don't want to quit my job. And I don't want to sell the story of like, you need to quit your job to go do the thing that you want to do, because I don't believe that. But so I don't want to quit my job until I have to choose, until I'm so busy in both places that like, I can't continue doing both, because I love my life. I love living my life. I love surfing. I love traveling. Like I want to have fun. And so to me, like working 80 hours a week is like never, ever, ever something I want to do. Even if I'm like in love with what I want to do, I want to, again, enjoy my life. And so this past couple of months, it really came to that of like, okay, down to the line, what do I pick? I pick myself, right? Like I pick my business. And so that hit me and I was like, oh, maybe it's time to step away. And then on top of that, like, I think similar to you, just having encounters with death and close encounters with death, it's like this realization of life is really short. And so why not do the thing that you want, right? like what if you were going to die in a month from now? Would you regret not leaving and like starting a business? Of course, probably, right? Like, or even like think about like, imagine if you make it until you're like 95 and you're like, hopefully not in a nursing home, but like walking around still feeling like really great in your body. But if you look back on your life, do you want to be like, I worked at Microsoft for 50 years? Probably not. Maybe, like, I don't know, maybe, right? Or do you want to be like, I gave it my all at the thing that I really truly wanted to try, right? And then I tried the next thing, and then I tried the next thing, and I learned and I grew and I expanded so much through all of these experiences. Not, by the way, that it's terrible to work at the same job for 50 years. Like that's not bad. So yeah, it was just this realization. And then sometime around January as well, when my business started really picking up, I had this moment of, and I think you felt the same thing, of like realizing that my impact even at Microsoft would be bigger if I left. And it was like this thing of like, like maybe if I stay here, I'm keeping myself small. And like, maybe it's like, I love what you said when you were like, I knew that this role wasn't going to be big enough for me. Like I knew it wasn't enough for me. And that's such a beautiful realization, because I think what happens, especially when you're young and you join like any big company, but really you start any kind of like entry level job, not that where you started at Microsoft was entry level, because totally wasn't. Like people work their career to get there. But oftentimes I think what happens is when you're younger, you have like so much passion and energy and things to give and like desire to like give and make an impact. And then you join a company, almost any company, and you're almost just like smacked down and like told to get in line. And you're like, wait for your time, right? And we have this storyline in our society of like work really hard, do the really tedious stuff, get good at it, and then like move your way up, right? Like be grateful for what you have. And I think what's so beautiful about your story is you were like, no, like this isn't enough for me. I know I can do more and I'm not going to settle. I think that's so cool. It's yeah, I feel in a lot of ways like I'm like, okay, I've done my time, right? Not that we have to do our time anywhere, but I'm just like, it's time now to move on and do something different.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much in there that I appreciate you saying and that I feel like should be pulled and put on a mug to drink your coffee. I think the first thing that really stuck in my mind was the reasoning for the name of your company, right? And like I like how you don't shy away from the challenge of the stigma that comes with the words, and you're breathing new power into it. And I think that's something that people, it just sticks in your head because of that, right? It's jarring and you're bringing positivity to it. So that's really cool. I think the other thing I really agree with was that you don't have to leave your 9 to 5 to do the things you want also. And I think that I did that for a really long time. And like I just left because I wanted to. It's not because I necessarily had to, right? And my father has been working at the same company for 30 years and he loves it. So there are people who just love to do that, and that's great. Nothing wrong with that. Like if you look at his LinkedIn, it's just the same company, 30 years. Whereas mine already, I'm like, not even half his age, and it's just like Anyways, but yeah, no, yeah, I probably will just go back and listen to everything you just said because it was very powerful. But
Oh, thank
yeah,
you. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a cool time and realization. But I think the thing that's so cool about your story and also mine, just in the leaving the thing that sustains you and that's safe and comfortable, comes back to exactly what you just said, like the choice of it, right? Like doing it because you want to and because it felt good, like not because you're like, oh my God, I have to get out of this. Oh my God, I have no other options. Like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like, obviously, the existential crisis comes, like, no matter what. But there's like this beautiful thing in recognizing that we have the power to choose and that you get to choose the thing that you want. Like, I think that's so cool. Um, okay, so when you were leaving though, so when you put your notice in and you knew you were starting Webacy, how did you feel? Were you kind of scared?
no, I was so excited. Like I said, I woke up every day like so excited to work on the next big thing. I was just felt
Mhm.
like I was chiseling away at my dream of making this a reality and a success. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was, yeah, there was some scariness, but I think like you said, you can always go back to the things. Like I think we're in a very lucky position that people in tech, especially if you've already had a job in tech, you can pretty
Mhm.
much know that you can find another job at another company. And that's
Mhm.
really, there's some security in that, but also it gives me that safety net that I like can give it my all in this company because there is a backup. And it kind of felt the same way as Cirque. Like I can go do Cirque because I can always come back to school. And there
Mhm.
is a beautiful freedom in knowing that there is that safety net. And I know like some
Mhm.
people do not have the ability to have that safety net or the luck to have that safety net. So I feel for that, but I do happen to have that
Mhm.
and I'm making the most of it.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so wise too, because I think often um it's so sad whenever there's something that we want to do and we have the full capability to do it, but we don't allow ourselves to do it because like we know other people wouldn't be able to, right?
Mhm.
It's something that, man, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm also divorced. I got married when I was like 25, I think, and then divorced by like 27. Pretty short marriage, maybe 28. And I remember like I remember having this distinct moment of realization of like people would kill for my life. And I feel this way about Microsoft a little bit too, like leaving. I'm like, people would kill for my life, like especially because I think when I was married, like we had this like big, beautiful house on the water. Like I was in my like mid 20s. He was a little bit older than me. Like we both made really good money. We had like nice cars. We had like the dog, the house. Like we would travel all the time. Like everything on paper looked epic, right? I remember a couple of our friends came over and um, one of them was like, "Man, this is the house that I hope to buy when I'm like 40." And it was just like this moment of like, oh man, and for so long, actually like the entire marriage, I felt that because I was in such a position of privilege that I should be grateful and that I should stay there. Like that I shouldn't make a change because I should be grateful for what I had. So I really love that you said that because when I did make like all of the change and my life totally unraveled in such a great way, making the decision to leave, it's like this knowing and this realization of like yes, you might have everything and people might kill like to work at Microsoft or to work in tech or to have this thing or um to live the life that you live in the exact way that you live it, but like also realizing that if it's not for you, like you're not doing anyone else a service. Like no one, anybody who wants your life is not being served by you living the life that you don't want to live, right? And if anything, stepping out of the thing that's not doing it for you into the thing that is doing it for you is only going to grow and expand you more, which is only going to grow and expand all the people around you more, right? Which is only then going to like allow and hopefully inspire other people into the things that they actually want. So I think that's really cool. And it was a good call out.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I 100% feel that. And I think even attending university, like I think there's
Mm,
Stanford in particular, there's this weird feeling that I think a lot of undergrads have of it's a little bit of guilt that they get to attend this. First of all, it's just the most beautiful school ever. It's like a
mhm,
paradise. But then you just feel this weird kind of like angsty privilege about being able to attend the university, whether it's through scholarship, whether it's not. And that
mhm,
comes out in weird ways. Like people feel strange about what they need to be doing versus what they want to be doing. They maybe
mm,
don't fulfill their full potential because they feel like it's like it's not like something they earned or whatever it may be, right? And these are
Mhm.
high performing academic smart kids because they made it into Stanford. But yeah, that's definitely there. And I think it happens across many kinds of elite universities, elite places.
Mm,
Tech, I think, has that a little bit too, depending on the kind of person you are. But yeah, I think
mhm.
it's hard to say. I think a lot of people haven't come to terms with, like, it's okay to put yourself first once in a while, because you being a better person makes the world a better place. That's my
Mm,
personal opinion about it.
yeah, no, I agree with that so much. And this is, I think this is such an important topic, especially so like coming from a parent, both of us have parents who immigrated here, right? Of like, did you ever feel that pressure that you had to fulfill a certain thing? Because this is like exactly what happened, I feel like, in my life. So for me, I was the first person that actually went to college, like in like from of my parents, and so I felt all this pressure to like become a doctor. Like so typical, but I was like, I have to be a doctor or like a lawyer. My mom, like since I was a kid, she was like, you're gonna be a lawyer. Not because she like, well, I think a little bit stereotypically like Asian wanted me to be like in the successful careers, but also because she used to say that I was really good at arguing and that I would always debate everything. She's like, you'd be such a great lawyer. But yeah, and I remember as an undergrad too, just feeling like that resonated so much, like feeling this need to do something that I didn't want to do so that I could like fill some shoes that were not my shoes, right? And like this thing of like, okay, I'm here now and college is really expensive and like I better do something really good with this. And similarly, I think when it came to joining Microsoft, like that was in large part was in the back of my mind, which by the way, I totally threw that away in college. Like I was studying, I started out studying piano performance and chemistry, and I ended up taking a philosophy class, fellow philosopher, and like falling in love with it. And I was like, fuck everything else. And I just studied philosophy and I was like, that's what I'm going to study. And like everyone that I knew, I remember like fell off their chairs. Like my grandparents started inviting like all these female doctors over to the house to like have dinner with me. Like all these women in these like really high paying, powerful careers like would invite them over and be like, come have dinner with our friend. She wants to talk to you about your future. And I'd be like, what? Like, what's happening?
Mom knew what she was
Finished
doing.
oh my gosh, it was so good. Yeah, and so that resonates so much. And even like joining Microsoft, for me, it was this thing that I, like at the time I felt like, well, when else am I going to get the opportunity to join Microsoft, right? Like that was totally was in my head because it wasn't on my radar, I think, until I got the opportunity to be here. And now that I'm here, I'm so grateful. And at the same time, that desire, that internal need or drive to do the thing that we think might be expected of us or like outwardly seems like would be better for us to do or make the most sense, that drive is like real. It's super powerful. It like keeps people in the positions and the lives that they live for entire lifetimes, right? So I don't know, like did you ever have those moments? I ask you this because your career is like is risk averse, as you mentioned earlier, right? Like I think it's like one of my favorite things ever is hearing that you left Stanford for 2 years, like to go fulfill some dreams and like something that was a hobby of yours, right? And I think even like I almost took a year off at university to go to South Africa with a couple of my friends, and I
Yes.
decided not to because my parents were like, you're never going to go back if you leave. But I loved hearing you be like, Stanford's always going to be there. And I feel that so much now. Like Microsoft will always be there. Or like if it's not Microsoft, something will always be there. But I'm curious, like, did you always feel the freedom to explore the things that you wanted? Or did you ever feel a little bit of like push slash drive to fulfill something on behalf of your parents or on behalf of expectations around you?
I think I got a little lucky for two reasons. So first, I'm a second child, so my older brother kind of took the blunt of that, and like whatever he went through, that was the expectation was much less on me growing up. And then the second thing was that I think my parents knew from a very young age that they would never be able to tell me what to do. Which is like, I wasn't a bad kid by any means, but if I wanted to do something, I was just going to do it. So I think um, in that sense, I never really felt like pressure from them. I always felt some internal pressure, to whether it was like succeed, be the best, whatever,
Mm,
improve. And I remember starkly that the only fight I ever had with my father, so he's the Japanese one, and stereotype for Japanese dads is that they're really strict and they're like, oh, you need to be the one to be a doctor and get good grades. He is the anti-opposite of that. So it's not anti-opposite, he is the opposite. So cool, and like he's really, even as he's aged, become more lax and more chill and more about like do whatever you want. But the only fight we ever had was, I remember we were driving in the car, I think in Japan, and I had to tell him that I was taking another job. I was going to take the Cirque du Soleil job, which would extend my leave from Stanford. And this is the only time we ever fought, because he was worried at first when I first left school. And then he thought, I promised him I'd go straight back to school after that first job. And then this other job came up and I had to tell him that I wasn't going back yet. He just thought I was never going to go back. And I know from a parent's perspective, like circus acrobat versus Stanford degree, like from him, like I was making the stupidest choice ever. So that was a really tough car ride. And ever since then, we still haven't had a single fight. And I think he knows that's the only fight we've ever had either. But I don't think he can complain now about what I'm doing. So all's good. But that was tough. That was really tough, because you do want to please the people that you care about. And that was a moment where I clearly was not, but I believed in myself. Like you said, you come to yourself and you're your own home and your own stability sometimes. So how to do it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love that too. Just in knowing that you were potentially going to disappoint your father, like so deeply, and being like, hey, I'm not going back to school, but I promise I am going back to school, but just like not yet.
Yeah.
Oh, what I don't know, just I'm so proud of you. It's really, I love that you've always allowed that internal compass to really guide you. I think in some ways I could relate to that, because well, my mom had 2 children, but I'm my dad's only child. And like the baby, obviously, of my mom's 2 children. And so 3 children, I'm the third. In some ways, I think I was the same way. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would tell me to do something, and I used to be like, I'm doing this because I want to, not because you told me to. So I was like very unruly, and same, like not that I was bad, like not that I was misbehaved, but I did always do the things that I really wanted to do. And my parents for years gave me this hard time about having to learn the hard way, because I was just one that I had to experience it. Like I didn't care if you told me, I just needed to experience it for myself. And so sometimes I learned things definitely the hard way, and sometimes I learned things really quickly. And so I don't know, I think that's, yeah, it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a skill or if it's just like an innate listening, but it's good to have, right? Like that drive, that inner drive to know that you have your back and that you'll take care of yourself and that you can trust what comes up that you want to do.
I can just imagine toddler Marie being like, no, I want to. Yeah. What's your sign, by the way?
I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
What do you think? I always like to ask people.
Oh my gosh. So I'm not very astrologically, this is hilarious since I'm such in the spiritual space and I have an astrologer that I like talk to and work with regularly, but I am like so not somebody that's good at knowing anyone's sign or like even all of the signs in the correct
I don't
order.
expect you to. It's just because I live in San Francisco, so people are always like, oh, I bet you're this, I bet you're that. I'm like, okay. Some of them are right, so I don't know.
What sign do people mostly think you are?
They think I'm a fire sign.
Yeah. Oh, okay, hold on, wait. So I would actually bet that you are more earthy. I wouldn't have said fire, but I don't know if you're earth or water. I'm like not entirely sure, but I wouldn't say fire, although you have a lot of elements, right, of like getting stuff done. Are you laughing because you're actually a fire sign? What are you?
No, that's so just funny. I just love like astrology and like it's just fun. But I'm a Libra.
Ah, I like it. I'm like thinking of Libra qualities. So like tell me, yeah, like give me the rundown. Like tell me about the Libra.
I don't really know much about it. It's an air sign. I'm technically Scorpio cusp because of where my birthday like lies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what happened?
Oh no, I'm like fascinated. I'm like, it's an air sign. I'm like, so off. But I'm like, I could kind of see it, not see it. Like, I guess it makes sense with the aerial, right? But I'm like,
Yes,
maybe
I don't really know. I don't hold much of a candle to like the validity all the time. I think it's sometimes fun to like reflect against whatever it says, but I think Libra, it's the scales. So it's about balance,
Yeah.
justice, funny balance. Funny as an acrobat. Um, yeah, justice, honesty, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense actually, that resonates. This is interesting. So I've recently been, so I'm again totally not an astrologer, as you can see and tell. Like I don't know a lot about astrology, although I do work with an astrologer. But with my one-on-one clients recently for coaching, I've been asking them because one of them, she just went to get an astrology reading, and I was like, hey, can you check what your soul contract is in? So this is like something new that I've been experimenting with and playing with. So we have our like three main signs. So like mine is Cancer, you're a Libra. And then we both have like two more. So like we have our rising, our moon, and then I forget what the other one's actually called. And then whatever sign our soul contract is in, which is super fascinating. So one of my clients, I actually don't know what her main sign is, but her soul contract is in Capricorn. And what's fascinating is like the soul contract is the thing that we're working on mastering in our life. So like my soul contract is in Aquarius, and like the life learning of an Aquarius is to be like authentic. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting because like authenticity is like probably my top value, right? Like it's very important to me to like show up authentically at work, not at work. Like most of what I do in my business is like coaching people into more authenticity and like authenticity in their lives and their businesses and their work. So I was like fascinating that that's my soul contract, what my soul contract is in, and hers is in Capricorn. And what was really crazy is like I was reading about the Capricorn sign and like the life lessons of a Capricorn, and I was like, oh my God, how are you not just a Capricorn actually? So I'd be curious to know what your soul contract is in as well. I might have to ask for your chart later.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. It's so funny that some people immediately kind of dismiss this as like not rooted in anything, because like historically it's actually like mathematic. Like people don't understand it is actually rooted in something, and it's like designed by people who were able to the like centimeter calculate where things are in the sky. And so like you can't even do that today. Like no one I know, like no scientist I know on the street smart enough to calculate where something's going to be 100 years from now and be right about it. So I can't imagine how people can just be like it's mumbo jumbo and really believe that. I think they just don't want to like be open to it or like accept that maybe it's real. So yeah, but yeah, we can talk about it.
I don't know. It's fascinating. Yeah, I don't think I would agree. It's like totally a science. The person that I go to, who I highly would recommend you see if you're ever interested in astrology reading, but she was a corporate lawyer for like 17 years. I think she worked in like corporate law, and I don't know if she was a corporate lawyer or worked in corporate law, but yeah, for 17 years. And she was like, so like, I think she is actually a Capricorn. So she's very logical, analytical, like not at all somebody like into the woo woo, right? And I don't know how she came across astrology, but she says the same thing. She's like, the more I learned about astrology, the more like it actually really fed into like my data and analytical being. And like that's, like she's like, she's like, I love this because it's a science, not because it's woo woo, even though she is very much into the woo woo now. So I don't know. I think it's really interesting and fascinating. And I would say I totally rejected, like, I don't want to say totally rejected like astrology, but I would have 5 years ago even been like, like I'd be one of those people like, I don't really know. Like, I don't put a lot of stock in that, right? Not that I would say that I put a lot of stock into it necessarily now. Again, I'm not an astrologer, so my knowledge is limited, but it's one of those things that I feel like once you kind of get into a little bit, you're like, oh, this is like really weird and it's really fascinating, and like the coincidences are pretty high, right? And then like you do start to get into the mathematical knowledge of it, or if you do, you're just like, whoa. Because I think you're right, there's not a person that I can think of that I know like that would be like, oh, I know exactly where that star is going to be 100 years from now. Like I know exactly where our earth is going to be 100 years from now, or like how things are going to change in the planet. Like I feel like, I don't know. And it's such a it's a science with such precision, developed like in a time that, was there even precision? Like how did we measure things? I don't know. I'm really fascinated in that. I'm super fascinated in like all of the ancient knowledge that we find, because I'm always like, how did we know that? And then what happened to us for a period of time where we knew nothing, and then we had to like evolve? Like that's what my real question is.
Yeah, there's a dark spot there that no one's ever explained. Um, but I also wonder, like, would we be better off if we didn't have Netflix? Maybe. Maybe I would read a little more. I don't know.
Right? Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm like so excited that we could talk. Also, yeah, it would be awesome just to, I mean, I know we've like kind of stayed in touch here and there, but it would be amazing just to stay in touch more, because yeah, you're just such a like badass and incredible person and so inspiring, and your life is such an inspiration, and the way that you look at things is such an inspiration. Oh, I did want to ask you, and I do want to ask you, what do your days look like now compared to when you were working like the 9 to 5? Like, what does your day-to-day entail, and how often do you feel like you work, and how happy and fulfilled do you feel at the end of every day? And I know it fluctuates for humans in its life, but yeah, where are you now?
That's a great question. I think there's this, I'm not on TikTok, but for some reason I see TikTok videos. It's like a TikTok and like a Reels thing that's going around that these people are saying, instead of, I quit my 40-hour work week to pursue what I wanted. And instead of 40 hours a week, now I work 24/7, like all the time. And I kind of feel that because I do work for Webacy all the time, but because it's something I want to work on, it doesn't feel like work, of course, right? So everything I do, like I either have to do it for the company or I want to do it. And so it is spread out through the weekend and so on. So my days typically start with like morning meetings, whoever that might be meeting with, some core work in the afternoon. I always work out every single day, whether that be rock climbing, whether it be just in the gym, going for a run. Just kidding, I don't run. I do run a little bit. I don't like running. And then in the evening, I try to do something fun. Like I also really enjoy living my life too. So, seeing friends, reading, it might be more Webacy work that I consider more fun than other parts of Webacy. It's all there, but that's my day-to-day nowadays.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I feel that too, by the way. Since I started TCP, there's not a moment that goes by where I'm not in some way thinking about TCP. Like there's just not. Whereas the beautiful thing I think about working for Microsoft is, and I know this is not true for everyone in the corporate space or everyone with a job of any sort, but like I truly shut my laptop and I like do not think about work. Like I'm like, once my laptop is closed, I'm like, I am done for the day. And I actually recently like took all of the apps off my phone too. So like I don't even respond to like Teams or Outlook on my phone anymore. Whereas I couldn't imagine a life in which I did that for TCP, like not have the apps on my phone so that I can be like talking to people and checking on things and working on stuff as I wanted to, but for the same exact reason, because it's like, it's fun, right? Like it feels really good. So tell me, like, where has Webacy gone? Like, where are you guys now as a company? Like you have this platform. So like if for the people listening, is there one thing that you would want them to do? Because I know like in thinking about death and what we want to do like post-death, or what we want to happen post-death, like I'm sure you have some opinions, right? And some things that literally every single person on this planet right now could probably take action on. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So right now, Webacy, we're still in beta. And so we're really developing the platform. And the reason we still haven't gone public yet is because we are developing the platform really, we're putting a lot of thought into it, because if you've gone to our website, you've seen, maybe if you were with us in the beginning, it was kind of around death, the messaging, but we've moved on now more towards protection, being prepared, peace of mind, that sort of thing, because that's something that as a company, you need to provide value and onboard people for what matters to them today. And that's not always mortality. People don't want to think about it. So our philosophy is still around being prepared and living life to the fullest, but our tech stack and our features have expanded beyond that, because we're just capable of more. So that's one reason we are releasing very soon publicly. So I would say to get on the wait list now, and then you'll be notified when we are public. But when it comes to just preparing in general, I would say the biggest thing, I'm going through the process of doing my will myself. And like, even if you don't have much, it's a good process to kind of take stock, check in with yourself. And it's also really daunting too, because no one likes to do paperwork. It's kind of a pain. But start the process, just start thinking about it. But Webacy as a company, we're 6 months old now. We raised a small pre-seed round in Q4 of last year, which like we weren't planning to raise. I think the pure necessity of what we were building, just people threw their tickets in the hat. And then we're about to launch actually our crypto product probably next month, like early next month. That's been huge, super exciting. It's a huge, crypto securities like not easy, and it's not it's hard for people, and even the current solutions are like dumb. The current solution is write it down on a piece of paper. Like there's got to be something better than that. So we've built it, we're testing it for security, and it's going to be out there soon. That's pretty exciting. That's where the company is.
Amazing. That's so cool. So tell me more about the crypto solution. Like, well, whatever you can tell. So if there are things you can't share yet, that's totally okay. But what's the idea behind it, and like how can people use it? And then would the advice be the same thing? Just get on the wait list?
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, crypto, I think started with what happens to your crypto when you die. Because I think the numbers at this point are 100 billion in Bitcoin only have been lost due to either death or loss of access to the original wallet. Isn't that crazy? Bitcoin only, and now there's all kinds of other different stuff you have to like think about. So that was the original problem we wanted to solve, and all of the historical recommendations for wallet security are, like I mentioned, the first one is write it down, keep it off digital, give half to your mom, give half to your sister, and say if I ever die, put them together. It doesn't make any sense. It's a Horcrux model of like we're not living in Harry Potter. But the other one is this multi-sig solution, so like multi-signature on a single wallet. There's Gnosis Safe and that Gnosis Safe protocol that things are built upon that is great. It kind of makes more sense for like a business or a DAO, or because there's multiple people that have to sign, right? So if one of them dies or two of them die, what are you really going to do? It's not a long-term solution. So we landed on this pre-approval smart contract tech. If you pre-approve assets to be transferred on a specific trigger, and that trigger either being loss of access if you're using our backup wallet, or death if you die. So there's a lot you can imagine that could be built on that system as well. So we have a lot of stuff on the roadmap, which I'm excited about, but that's the philosophy behind it. It's a better solution. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. If you do, how into like Web3 stuff are you?
Oh my gosh, like not super into, like not knowledgeable, but definitely like active. Which I think is a lot of people, by the way. Like the majority, especially like lately with the boom, like we have friends who are like not tech people, but like really into stuff, that could definitely, I feel like all of us could brush up our skills, right? Like we could all know a little bit more about what it is that we're actually doing, and especially like when it comes to what we're investing in, and then like what happened. Yeah, no, I would say yes, active, knowledgeable, not very.
Yeah, you're ahead of the curve from most. So it's just funny because being in the space, you think that everyone is in Web3, but it's not. Like most of the world is curious, but doesn't actually own any or want to know about it. And we're seeing a huge wave of it's going to become just more pertinent in our lives. And so that's kind of what we're preparing for. But for our launch, we're actually giving 1,000 access tokens away for free. So you should, yeah, it's there's a sign up on our crypto landing page, but I can also just send that to you
Amazing.
to put your name on. But we're doing access tokens first, again, to like iterate on our product, make sure it's ready for like the general use and so on.
Yeah, I would love an access token. That would be so amazing. Yeah, I can't wait for it to come out. I literally, when you were talking about it, got chills. So yeah, I'm so pumped for you. I'm so freaking proud of you. I'm like so honored to know you. Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. And I hope we can keep more in touch because it's been so nice to talk with you. And I just want to keep talking to you.
Me too. I'm so down. Like literally, I'm here. My last day at Microsoft, by the way, is July 6th. It's my 7-year anniversary.
That is so
freaking pumped. Great. I'm so excited. But I'm telling you that because I will have a lot more time. Like a lot more time. So I'm sure I'll reach out to you before then, but definitely post that. I would love to like maybe even sync regularly. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, 100%. How exciting. It's approaching. You have a little time, but I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Wow. I literally can't wait. It's yeah, it's like this weird juggling between like not allowing myself to check out because I still have too much time. And yeah, that thing that you mentioned earlier of just like holding integrity in your work as best as you can, while knowing that something really exciting is coming around the corner. So I will keep you posted.
I can't wait to see.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Maika. I hope you have like the most amazing day. And yeah, I'll shoot you a link as soon as this is out.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Let me know how I can share and where you want me to share.
Thank you. I will.
All right. Bye.